Let's begin, though, here this morning with the landmark legal case against former President Donald Trump. He was indicted last week on charges related to alleged hush money payments. On the left, you are looking at pictures of Palm Beach International Airport, where the former president will leave on his private jet for New York City. On the right, you can see Trump Tower. Trump is staying there tonight ahead of his arraignment tomorrow. Trump told followers on social media last night that he is flying to New York today ahead of tomorrow's arraignment. He's also been trying to stir up anger at the judge and others involved in the case. Robert Costa is outside the courthouse in New York. Bob, good morning.
Good morning. We will not know what specifically is in this indictment until it is unsealed tomorrow. But former President Trump and Republicans are already on the attack.
He's gearing up for a battle.
Former President Trump and his legal team are preparing to fight what his lawyer Joe Tacopina is calling a political persecution.
Of course, I very much anticipate a motion to dismiss coming because there's no law that fits this.
The former president is expected to appear in court on Tuesday afternoon, escorted by NYPD officers and Secret Service agents. There, CBS News senior legal analyst Ricky Kleeman says he'll be processed like any other defendant.
He will have his picture taken, which becomes a mugshot. He will have his fingerprints taken electronically, like any other defendant at this point in time.
The indictment remains sealed, but a source familiar tells CBS News that Trump will likely be charged with falsifying business records in the first degree, a felony stemming from his alleged role in hush money paid to adult film star Stormy Daniels back in 2016.
I should not be held accountable for Donald Trump's dirty deeds.
Michael Cohen, a key witness for the prosecution, alleges Trump directed him to make the payments to Daniels. Cohen has served time in prison partly for his role in that exchange. In an interview with CBS News, he says this investigation goes beyond his word.
Let the documents and the evidence speak for itself.
For weeks, Trump has gone on the offensive, going after Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg and now the judge assigned to the case. Trump wrote on his social media site Friday, Judge Juan Merchan hates me. Republicans came to Trump's defense this weekend, including potential competitors in the 2024 race.
They're trying to do all these legal gymnastics to try to act like it's a felony. He has an agenda. That is not the rule of law.
But not all GOP rivals are voicing support. Former Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson announced on Sunday he's running for president and thinks Trump should get out of the race.
The office is more important than any individual person. And so for the sake of the office of the presidency, I do think that's too much of a sideshow and distraction.
After Trump is arraigned on Tuesday, he plans to return to Florida, where he will speak to reporters at Mar-a-Lago, all while his attorneys keep close tabs on other ongoing federal investigations of Trump, one on January 6th and another on his handling of classified records. Anne-Marie, Vlad.
All right, Bob, thank you. So I want to bring in Jessica Roth right now. She's a former federal prosecutor for the Southern District of New York and a professor at Cardozo School of Law. Thank you so much for joining us. So let us dig into this, keeping in mind that we actually don't even know what the former president's going to be charged with yet. All this conversation about Stormy Daniels, it's actually a lot of speculation based on the people who have already spoken to the grand jury. That being said, we know that Donald Trump is going to plead not guilty. What could the legal strategy be for him moving forward?
Well, I think the legal strategy is going to be to file a slew of motions to try to get the charges dismissed. And even if they're not successful in getting the charges dismissed, then to delay the proceedings. So I imagine his lawyers already have the motions ready to go. How quickly they actually want to file them might be in question, given that delay may actually work to his advantage. But some of them may be geared toward claims we already hear him making, that this is a selective political prosecution, statute of limitations questions. Other motions will be geared toward what exactly are in the charges. And so it may be, for example, a motion that argues that these particular charges, if they are based on the payments to Stormy Daniels as being a violation of campaign finance laws under federal law, that can't be brought in state court. So we have to hold off and see, but I imagine they are ready to go with a variety of motions depending on what's actually in those charges.
I imagine you are correct. That is the strategy that we've seen over and over again from various Trump legal teams for various legal situations he's been in. So the Washington Post, in the meantime, is reporting that the Justice Department uncovered new evidence of potential obstruction by former President Trump in the classified document probe. As you know, there's the classified documents, there's January 6th, there's the meddling in the election in Georgia. He's got a lot of stuff going. There are other cases here in Florida, as well, I mean, in New York as well. Could anything that's happening with this case have an impact on the various other cases that are being investigated?
Well, what's significant about the evidence that was reported in the Washington Post is that it really ties Trump personally to the facts in question, to the material that was classified, that was found at Mar-a-Lago. And it's always been this open question, will they be able to tie him, his knowledge of what was in those boxes of material? And so if, in fact, there are witnesses who have documents in the form of email messages that reflect the former president's personal involvement in reviewing that material, that goes strongly to his own intent, which has always been the hardest question in these cases. Whether that transfers over to the other cases where his intent similarly will be a challenge to bring, I'm not sure. But if it can help establish a pattern of personal involvement in some of these critical matters, maybe it will be helpful in those cases as well.
Very interesting. So we know, the former president has basically used this to fundraise, to get attention. We know he's running for the 2024 election. He announced that he was going to be arrested last Tuesday. He was wrong about which day of the week, or right about the day of the week, wrong about, which week. That being said, he's already said that as soon after the arraignment, he's going right back to Mar-a-Lago. He's going to have a speech. If you were advising the former president, does he have to be careful about the things that he says, at these speeches, on Truth Social? Could any of that have an impact on this case?
If I were advising him as his lawyer in these criminal matters, I would absolutely beg him to keep quiet.
Right.
First of all, anything he says can be used against him in any of these proceedings. They're his own statements, and so as a matter of evidence law, they're admissible.
Yeah.
But even before we get to that, they are going to, I think, really call into question whether there should be a gag order issued by a judge in these cases, such that if Trump were to violate the gag order, he could be held in contempt of court and potentially put in prison. That'd be a very quick way of potentially imprisoning him. So I think he has to be really careful about that. I also think if he is convicted of any of these crimes, potentially a judge could take into account at sentencing, particularly some of the threatening remarks he's been making about the judge and the district attorney. And finally, there is the potential that depending on how far he goes with such threats, that he could be charged with a new crime based on efforts to intimidate and to obstruct ongoing investigations and to threaten government officials. So I think he needs to be really, really careful.
That is really interesting. Jessica Roth, thank you so much.
My pleasure.